I did not coordinate anything, but my title this morning is I Need an Appointment with God ASAP. I need an appointment with God ASAP. Don't put me on hold. Don't tell me I'm 2 weeks out. Don't make me wait in the waiting room. I need that ability to see you right now. Go to Job 23. Job was surrounded by friends who he called in Job 16:2. Go to Job 23, but who he called in Job 16:2 miserable comforters. After he listened to his friends, he said, "Miserable comforters are ye all." The young of the friends steps up in Job chapter 32. Make your way to Job 23. And this youngest of all the friends, he had a problem with Job, and that's because Job could not lay his hand on one single reason why he was going through these problems. What Elihu was preaching was the truth. However, it was the wrong application in Job's life, and as youth does so often, they have their truth correct, but they failed to apply it to the right person and in the right manner. Job was not only surrounded by loss, he was surrounded by physical ailments, but he was surrounded by friends who were truly physicians of no value. They had nothing to add to his life except misery. We're there in Job chapter 23, and if you'll look at it, and then Job answered and said, "Even today is my complaint bitter." Think about what he's saying. "My stroke is heavier than my groanings. Oh, that I knew where I might find him!" Exclamation point. "That I might come even to a seat." Look at how much he's done. "I would order my cause before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would know the words which he would answer me and understand what he would say unto me. Will he plead against me with his strength, with his great power? No, but he would put strength in me. There the righteous might dispute with him. So should I be delivered forever from my judge. Behold, I go forward, but he is not there, and backwards I cannot perceive him. On the left hand where he doth work, but I cannot behold him. He hideth himself on the right hand, that I cannot see him. But he knoweth the way that I take, and when he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold." Truly, Job is a man that did not warrant. Can I just say this? He did not warrant what had happened to him. There was nothing in Job's life that even would be a reason for things to happen to him. Go all the way back to Job chapter 1 and verse number 8. And in Job chapter 1 and verse number 8, Job is sitting here, and Job, even God describes Job this way. Are you ready? "And the Lord said unto Satan," Job 1:8, "Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect." The word perfect there doesn't mean without sin. It just means he was mature. You take every area of a life, and some of us, maybe all of us, are having to grow in a certain area. We're good in one area, but we have to grow. This was not Job. Job was perfect. He was, again, not without sin, but every area of his life was where it needed to be. Look at the second thing it said, and an upright man. Upright man simply means his first knee-jerk reaction was to do right. If you poked him, he'd say hallelujah. If you hit him, he'd say praise the Lord. If you did him dirty, he turned to the Lord. This was who Job was. Nothing that happened to Job was warranted because of Job's life. Then it says, and one that feareth God. This is somebody that truly was not afraid of God, but had such a reverence for God and a sensitivity to, would this please God? A sensitivity to, would God be okay with this? Again, nothing that happened to Job was warranted, because even God said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? This man is a perfect man. This man is an upright man. This man feareth me. And then the last thing he said, which I find very interesting, and escheweth evil. That word escheweth means this: if he knew evil was out that door right there, he'd climb through the baptistry, he'd go down the fire escape, he'd go out the back of the bus barn back there, he'd go all the way down Highway 80, he'd go all the way around through White Oak, and then he'd probably even venture out the Glade Water just to get the Drug Emporium. Job was that kind of guy that he was not going to go through the neighborhood of evil. He was not going to go through anything that had to do with evil. If anybody did not deserve what had happened to him, it was Job. Go back to Job 23 now, if you will. In Job chapter 23, in verse number 2, Job had arrived at a point to where he was done. He arrived at a point in life to where I cannot take this anymore. And he said in verse 2, even today is my complaint bitter, my stroke is heavier than my groanings. What it means is he keeps getting beat up. His groanings can't keep up with the next hit. He gets it out and then he gets hit again. Job was at a place in his life to where he said, I am done. And then he says this, verse 3, I love this. Oh. Now, there's a difference in my oh, your oh, and when the women in our life go, oh. When women get to that oh part, you better get out of their way because they are done. Job was this, look at, oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his seat. Job was done to the point he said, I'm going to go see him. And I wish I knew where he was at right now. Because if I knew where he was at, look at verse 4, I would order my cause before him and fill my mouth with arguments. Job's attitude was this: if I could find his office, if I could find the door, and if I had the right thumbprint to get in that door, I would march through that door. I'd bypass the secretary. I'd bypass security. Clean up on aisle 4. I'd bypass security. And I would walk right into his office, and I would walk right up to him, and I would put my hands right on his desk, and I would say to him, let me tell you something. This was Job's attitude. Don't look at me that way. Have you ever been there? Have you ever wished, if I could just find God right now? I think God is unaware. I don't think he knows that I didn't deserve this one. And everybody sitting in this auditorium could take your pen out and you could write the things you didn't deserve. Don't look at me that way. You could write the things you don't deserve. That wasn't fair and that wasn't right. That shouldn't have happened and that. No. And God, Job's saying, if I could find God, look at verse 5. I would know the words which he would answer me and understand what he would say unto me. It's almost as if Job was like, I need to have a conversation with God because him and I laugh every time I read this, him and I just need to come to an understanding. I hate to break the news to you. God doesn't need to come down to your understanding. God doesn't need to come down to my understanding. I am not here to pull God down to my office and my level of living and say, sit in my living room and sit in my world, and you and I need to have a talk. That's not how this works. There are many times that you and I can feel the same way. We're not perfect. We don't always make the right decision. It's almost as if we knew evil was out that door, we would go out that door and then be shocked when we got bit by the lion. But know this, we're not that way. And there are times that you can say, I deserved that one. Like I had that one coming. Don't judge me for what I'm about to tell you. But my dad looks at me one day, and I am engaged, getting ready to get married. And we're watching TV after we read our Bible and prayed and fasted for 3 days. And we're watching TV, and a commercial came on the TV. And it said $39.99, a Yugo. And my dad said, now, that's a car you need to buy. And he left to go out of town. So I went down to the East Texas Professional Credit Union, and I walked in to see Mrs. Ferguson down there. She was the lady that facilitated all. How many know what a Yugo is? How many do not know what a Yugo is? It's going to be a great laugh. Look it up later. And so I went down, walked into Mrs. Ferguson's office, said, hey, my dad said buy a Yugo. And she goes, with what? He'll sign when he gets back in town. He'll co-sign when he gets back in town. She took out that book, and she said, Yugo. She's looking at it, and she goes, Bob, it's not even in the book. I don't even know what a Yugo is. I said, call Young Chevrolet out there in Dallas, and they'll tell you. So she picks up the phone, she calls Young Chevrolet, and she's getting the specs on this Yugo, and then she gets to the price, $39.99, $3,999. It gets 55 miles to the gallon. They stopped manufacturing them they wouldn't let them in the U.S. because a lady was going through the Yugo going across the bridge, and the wind picked up the Yugo and threw it off the bridge. And from that's how light the thing was. I came out one time after I bought this car, and the teenagers had taken it and put it inside the playground that used to be in front of the gym. And I walked out, and I'm like, how did my car, it was so light that they could pick it up and transport it any place they wanted. But my dad said, buy this car. He said, I would buy. So Mrs. Ferguson, we get it. I go to Dallas. I pick up this Yugo. Let me tell you something. That was the worst purchase I have ever made in my life. Who are those guys that Click and Clack that were on? How many know what I'm talking about? Is it Click and Clack, right? Now we're getting off the Sublime. Click and Clack. I was listening one time, a lady called in and said, hey, I've lost the gas cap to my Yugo. What do I need to do? They started laughing. And they said, hey, stick a rag in it and light it. Make a Molotov cocktail out of it. I was offended. I was offended when people would make fun. But we went on Kelly's not here. We went on our honeymoon, and my mama gave us her Buick LeSabre, and my mama drove that Yugo for a week while we were on our honeymoon. But that thing started spitting and sputtering. And I'm going down 4th Street. I have to be in Shreveport to preach that night. And this Yugo, every time it rained, it would spit and sputter. And my Bible falls into the floor. And then I say these words, God, I hate this car. I want it gone. And I leaned down on the floorboard to pick it up, looked up, and I hit the back end of a concrete bed truck, and it totaled that Yugo. My first thought was, what a man of prayer. But I could honestly say, I deserved that right there. So there's no comeback to God that says, how dare you? There's no comeback to God that says, how am I going to explain this? There is no comeback. But there are things in your life and things in my life that you wake up one day and you think to yourself, no, I am serving the Lord. No, you do not understand. I love you. I am dedicated to you. That such day came when RG was born into our world. And his health is starting to decline. And I don't talk about it much, but I would ask for your prayers. And he's sleeping more than he is awake these days. But those were the days. That's the day you wake up and you walk out of that room and you have a beautiful baby girl that you adore and you can't wait to hug. You can't wait to put on your chest when she's young. Then God gives you a son, and then when you find out all the abnormalities that go with having a special needs son, these are the days that you want to walk into his office, and these are the days I don't need an appointment. Don't try to stop me, because I'm going to barge into the throne room of God, and I'm going to plead my cause, because how dare you? And there are a lot of believers right now that are sitting on bitterness, and they're sitting on hurt because something has come into their life that they are like, I don't understand it. I love you, I respect you, I adore you, I want to serve you, and how dare you disrupt my life in such a fashion? Job was here, and Job was like, I'm going to see him. And when I walk into his office, look at verse number 6. Job starts looking at the responses that God would give. Look at verse number 6. Will he plead against me with his great power? Job was fully prepared to grapple with God. I find this very amusing that he's fully prepared to go into this meeting and prove a point. Wrestle with God on the merits of why he didn't deserve this. Wrestle with God on how much this has made him lose and how much this one move lost children and he lost respect. And even now the children are using him as a byword. He has no respect in the gate. And this is our God that looks and he says to God, I'm going to go plead with God. And what's he going to do? Wrestle with me? Will he use his power? But then he comes to this conclusion in verse number 6. No. He says no. He said, oh, that I could find him, because if I could find him, I'd walk in there and I'd pound the desk and I'd plead my cause. And you don't understand how much this has impacted. You don't understand how much I've lost children. I'm in the graveyard. And now my wife says, curse me, curse you, and die. And you don't understand. I've lost it all. And I am going to plead my cause because I didn't start out to do anything to deserve this. And there are many of us sitting in this room that there are things we do deserve. There are many things we don't even pray about because we understand I did that to myself. But there are things that you didn't deserve. What is happening to you, around you, is not in keeping with the sincerity of your heart and the honesty of your love for the Lord. And he said this, if I could find him, will he plead against me with his strength, with his great power? Look what he said, verse 6. No, but he would put, what please? Strength in me. It reminds me of the New Testament sister verse in 2 Corinthians 12:8. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice that it might depart from me. Verse 9, and he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Would not the expected answer from God to Paul, let me remove the thorn? Wouldn't you think by the third time he would come and say, God, I heard you on the road to Damascus. I said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? I want to serve you, and Lord, please. But you've given me a thorn. When you think the third time that as a parent and as a father that he would take that thorn away? But here's what he said. My grace is sufficient. I'm going to make a very bold statement, and please never forget this. God's answer to more pain is more grace, not less thorns. God's answer to more pain is more grace, not less thorns. I think the words we heard in song today are so indicative of this truth. God will not reveal to you the why behind the loss because you are not his equal. You are not his equal. The hardest thing a wife does is trust her husband. The hardest thing grown children do is trust their parents. Because we think because we are grown and because we can look our parents in the eye that they owe us the explanation. Parents don't owe their children explanation because here's why. Parents don't even know what explanation to give. But don't we make up a lot of it? Right? And when they start out logicking you, when they start out thinking you, when they race to the end, and now you can't keep up with them. Chrissy, I'm sure you're experiencing this with Will. You cannot keep up with that kid. You want to know why, Will? Because you are like Randy Cronin. And I had your father as a teenager, and he drove me nuts when he was in 7th and 8th and 9th grade, because Randy Cronin is one of the smartest men I'll ever meet, but he was smart at 14 and 15, and one day he were at camp, and he said, what do you think that verse means right there? And I said, well, here's what I think it means. He said, then how do you explain this verse and 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 this verse in light of that verse? I said, Randy, go back to the dorm. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I should have just said, I don't know. And then Randy's response would have been to that, then why are you the youth pastor? Because I like to babysit you people, all right? There comes a point to where when the answer to pain is more grace, not less thorns. But you have to be prepared for this. Look at Job 23:13. But he is in one mind. Who can turn him? Did you see that? He is in one mind. Who can turn him? God is not operating in your life with no next. God is not operating in our lives with no plan. He does not evolve with us. God is God. And God with a singular mind looks through the transparency of what you're going through right now, and he looks to the end of where it will get the most glory for him. And no matter how much you plead with him, and no matter how much you say, I don't like this, he's singular in his focus. And what he will do will be this. He will give you more grace. Because y'all, newsflash, and we're getting ready to see it, this ain't the last time you're going to go through it. Because look what it says. And I'll tell you, this morning Sunday school, I didn't like that Sunday school lesson. And I don't like the rest of this verse. I'm just being honest. Look at it. But he is in one mind, who can turn him? And what his soul desireth, even that he doeth. For he performeth the thing that is appointed for me. Look at the next phrase. And many such things are with him. I will tell you right now, if there's more of this to come, I would much rather go to heaven right now. How many would agree with that? How many think about the time I'm over it and I have left? I have learned my lesson. I've graduated from this thing of sorrow and woes and veils of tears. How many know it just comes right back? And you're thinking to yourself, do we ever outgrow this? Do we ever move past these kind of situations? And I will tell you, no. But God is a wonderful God that you and I must remember this. He does not take away the thorns. He gives you grace. And there is something to be said that when you and I do these two things. One, stop inspecting your problems to see if you deserve it or not. Stop inspecting your problems. Stop looking at it and going, well, did I deserve this or did I not? I don't think I really deserve this. No. Whether you did it to yourself or God's doing it through you, guess what? He's still going to give you grace. Remember that you go, I wrecked? I did that. Now I'm out of car, albeit a very nice car. I'm out of car. The insurance, right? So let's talk about insurance. You got to love insurance. You gotta love insurance. So I call the bank and I say, look, the Yugo's sitting down at the junkyard because it's been towed down there. And Mrs. Ferguson said, all right, that's where it's at. I had insurance, so contacted the insurance. The insurance adjuster goes out there. The insurance adjuster that went out there was drunk. My little red car is sitting next to a little red sports car that was wrecked. And when he turned in his thing, he turned it in that I'm getting all this money back. And I called Mrs. Ferguson. Mrs. Ferguson, I only owe $39.99 on the car. Like, I don't owe that much. This adjustment is wrong. She goes, I tried to tell him 3 times, Bob. And I was like, but I'm not taking this money. I will take enough money to pay off the car. The insurance adjuster was so prideful, they said, I didn't make a mistake. And it was like, yes, you did. So I'm arguing with the insurance adjuster, and finally I said, Bob, shut up. And then I was like, oh, no, you did. You did good. You did. You're right. You're right. Can I tell you something? God came in and God took care of my blunder. And I've seen God take care of his workings in my life. I stopped a long time ago inspecting and trying to dissect what was mine and what is yours, because I'm so messed up. Y'all straighten up your halo. I am so messed up, and so are all of us. That it's like, God, I need you. I have to have you. Would you go look at the very beginning of Job 23 and verse number 1? Then Job answered and said, even today is my complaint bitter. My stroke is heavier than my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to a seat, that I would order my cause before him and fill my mouth with arguments. Job was in the mindset that he truly was this kind of person, that he thought he could detail it out why you need to take this away. And I'm just coming to you to tell you this. Just take all of it. Take all of it. Don't try to be your own attorney. Fix what you know you did wrong. But just pick it all up and walk into the throne room of God and say, God, I've made a mess and you're trying to work in me. And God, right now, I can't even decipher what is what. Have you ever been there where it came so much as a spiritual tsunami, you don't even know what is yours and what is God's? Has it ever been just this plethora of mail that comes in and you're trying to say, well, Kelly made this bill and Bob made this bill, or blame it all on RG? Let me tell you that that was funny. When it all starts coming in, let me tell you, don't spend your time dissecting. Spend your time on your knees praying and saying, God, would you help me? The second thing I want to tell you is look at verse number 6. Will he plead against me with his great power? No. But he would put strength in me. I want you to notice the wording of your Bible, but he would. It means he wants to. It means he's ready to. It means he is poised to put strength in you. Wherever you have come to today, you don't have to stay without strength. You don't have to live without hope. You don't have to live without comfort. And if you are a child of God, and when I as a child of God get to that point to where now I'm living in misery with what is going on, it is a choice to live in misery. But it's my choice. Because he would put strength in me. Job's problem had grown into bitterness and groanings. Job's problems have driven him to be his own attorney. Job's pain was evident because the grace had worn off. Would you please go to chapter 19 and verse 22? Anybody that's in the medical profession and anybody that has ever been through surgery, what do they tell you? They're giving you prescribed pain medicine, right? And what do they always tell you? Keep it in your what? System. Keep it in your system. Because if you fool with the medication while you're recovering, the pain will rise above. And you know what? Look at Job 19:22. Why do you persecute me as God and are not satisfied with my flesh? Look at verse 23. Oh, that my words were now written. Oh, that they were printed in a book. That they were graven with an iron pen and let in the rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. Look at him in chapter 19, and then look at him in chapter 23. In chapter 19, he was like, God will live forever, my Redeemer standeth. But in chapter 23, he's like, I'm going to find him, and I'm going to march into his office. And then he comes to this conclusion while he's walking through this appointment with God. No, because when I get in there, he's going to want to put more strength in me. He's just going to pat me on top of the head and say, Bobby, you'll be just fine. Don't you hate older people that don't panic? How many know what I'm talking about? It's Brother Wood's 90th birthday, and the pandemic hits, and him and Miss Woods are sitting on the back porch holding hands like the world is right, everything's good. So I walk around. I'm worried about Brother and Miss Woods. And so I walk, because you know them elderly people, you know. Did you get to see my card? Yeah. I was looking for the right 90th birthday card. And I put on there, now that you're old, something to this degree, on the inside, you better keep moving or they're going to put a slip cover over you. And I thought it was funny. I didn't know if it was disrespectful or not, so when I was buying it, I was FaceTiming Kelly going, do you think Brother Woods will get mad at this? and I said, Miss Woods would, but no, I'm kidding. And so I walk around the back, and I'm thinking to myself, the pandemic has hit. They'll be masked up. They'll be all suited up, sitting there like the Michelin Man, and I'll just have to, hi, how are you, to speak through, you know, all this layers. And they're just sitting on the back porch holding hands. I walk around. Kelly and I are panicked. We're masked up. Brother Woods, how you doing? And Brother Woods responds, doing fine. Been through polio, been through world wars, and I forgot this man was there when Abraham Lincoln was president. And in fact, he gave him the pen when he signed the Emancipation. And so I'm thinking to myself, I walked away going, Bob, you are such a wimp. Because this man is not even missing a beat. God is so mature in our world. And He's so God that when we come to Him, you know what He says? You'll be okay. And my grace is sufficient. Amen. And when we're like, but this isn't fair, you'll be okay. Because my grace is sufficient. The time we panic is the time that God goes, you'll be okay. And Job even changed who he was. Because if you're there in Job chapter 23, look at verse number 10. In verse number 6, he goes, no, He'll just put strength in me, right? He goes, I can't find Him anywhere. But because I can't see Him in verse number 8, and I can't see Him in verse number 9, in verse number 10, I don't have to know the way He takes. Because He knows the way I'm going. I love that about God. When I started reading this, look at this. Behold, I go forward, but He is not there. And backwards, and I cannot perceive Him. On the left hand where He doth work, but I cannot behold Him. He hideth Himself on the right hand that I cannot see Him. But He knoweth the way that I take. And when He hath tried me, I shall come forth as what? Gold. Pain will always be there. It's just covered up with grace. And this is why we must constantly, every day, every moment, we must surround ourselves with grace. Look at verse 15, if you will, Job 23. Therefore am I troubled at His presence. When I consider, I am afraid of Him. For God maketh my heart soft, and the Almighty troubleth me. What this means is that God will constantly keep you in a state to where you need Him. You see, if everything was going right in your life, you wouldn't need Him. If you had no problems, you wouldn't go to prayer. If you had all the money you needed, you wouldn't budget. You wouldn't fret. You wouldn't pray. You wouldn't watch. But because we are, could I put it this way, working class Christians. I'm not talking about economically right now. Listen to this. We are working class Christians. And you know what God says? I won't give you enough to where you forget me, and I won't give you too little to where you curse me. I will keep you right where you need to be so that you'll trust me. This is where we need to be. Chippy, the parakeet, never saw it coming. 1 second, he was peacefully perched in his cage. The next, he was sucked in, washed up, and blown over. The problems began when Chippy's owner decided to clean Chippy's cage with a vacuum cleaner. She removed the attachment from the end of the hose and stuck it in the cage. The phone rang, and she turned to pick it up. She barely said hello when Chippy got sucked in. The bird owner gasped, put down the phone, turned off the vacuum, opened the bag. There was Chippy, still alive but stunned. Since the bird was covered with dust and soot, she grabbed him and raced him to the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and held Chippy under the running water. Then realizing that Chippy was soaked and shivering, she did what any compassionate bird owner would do. She reached for the hairdryer and blasted the pet with hot air. Poor Chippy never knew what hit him. A few days after the trauma, the reporter who initially had written about the event contacted Chippy's owner to see how the bird was recovering. Well, she replied, Chippy doesn't sing much anymore. He just sits and stares. It's hard not to see why. Sucked in, washed up, and blown over. That's enough to steal the song from the stoutest of hearts. Sometimes life will suck you in, wash you up, blow you over, and you'll just be like this. But always know what I'm about to tell you. It's going to be okay. And I'll tell you why it's going to be okay. Because God is still on his throne. God is not evolving with your problems. He's singularly focused how to get you through it and how to come out on the other side. My dad used to tell me often, if the worst thing happened to us, which is death, it'd be the best thing to ever happen to us because we would wake up in heaven. I need an appointment with God ASAP. And I think what you're going to find out when you barge in with your problem, he's going to put more strength in you. He's going to pat you on the head, and he's going to say, it'll be okay. Because he knoweth the way. I don't have to know. The hardest thing you'll ever hear your children say from the back seat. Are we there yet? And then my mama would say this, we're here. We may not be there, but we're here now. And I didn't like those kind of answers. And then my dad would say, you ask me that question one more time, you won't be going anywhere in life. Y'all, listen. When you march in and you do get to see him, you will find a God sitting on top of his throne, secure and okay. And then you'll walk away going, it's going to be okay. Thank you for taking the time to watch one of our services here at Emmanuel Baptist Church. And I would love to be a blessing to you. My number's at the bottom of the screen. And if you need anything, I would love to be of help any way I can. Again, thanks for watching. I hope the sermon was a blessing to you, and we will see you next time.